Welcome, everybody, to today's edition of Womanhood. I am your host, Lady T.
And I am Tanya Nicole.
Okay, and welcome to Womanhood. So first, we just want to let you know that we are so excited that you decided to join us today for our amazing topic. Hopefully you just chimed into the Patrick O'Moore show where they are talking about fatherhood and a little bit about empty nesting, and we're going to be continuing on that conversation from the woman's perspective. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are joining us on YouTube today, and let's get it started.
Yes, I definitely want to say shout out to the last show that just came on. Very insightful information. So if you had a chance to watch it, please check it out. Male perspective. Really proud of those men out there, that are doing it and representing well and, getting rid of the stereotypes that are out there that we so need to get rid of.
Yeah, it was a great conversation and definitely a conversation that can go on and on. So hopefully Patrick O'Moore decides to continue that conversation because I think it's great. And I think it's a conversation that a lot of young men, young and old, need to hear.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. So let's start with our topics of the week before we get into our actual topic for today.
All right. So I guess I'll go first. The U.S. House passed a bill banning discrimination against Black hair. Yay! But so way past due. It's really unfortunate that they had to do this bill, especially in 2022, but you have to do what needs to be done in order to get change made. The bill is called the Crown Act, and it means creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. I do want to read a quote from Omar. She was one of the individuals that were responsible for this bill being passed. And she says, "I want my girls to grow up in a world where they know that they will not be discriminated against because of their hair or the way they look. Also, natural Black hair is often deemed unprofessional simply because it does not conform to white beauty standards." Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, who's a Caucasian woman. She also goes on to say, discriminating against Black hair is discrimination against Black people. And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no, number one, I'm happy that they passed that act, but it's unfortunate that an act like that even needs to be passed, period. Hair is, well, for me, and I know for a lot of the women I know, can be a struggle. Doesn't need to be, but it can be just based on the societal standards of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Even like for a story, I saw my mom the other day and my hair was kind of like really wild. And she was like, comb your hair. It looks untamed. And I'm like, This is hair. This is my hair. This is our hair. Yeah. We shouldn't feel like it's untamed. And it's that narrative that's kind of been passed along as time has gone on that keeps us, I think, afraid to be free in our Afrocentric, I'll say,
natural
way. Yeah, in our naturalness. It's like, this is the hair that naturally comes out of my head. So why do I need to be ashamed of it and made to feel like there's something wrong with it when I know that there's nothing wrong with it at all?
And what's interesting as well is not only is it deemed unprofessional, people get discriminated just going for a job if you have braids or dreadlocks or an afro. Yeah. No matter how qualified you are, just because of the way your hair is styled, they would say, no, thank you. We'll go to someone else. And even in our schools where our children are, these children are getting on detentions in some of these schools.
Wow.
Because they wear dreadlocks or they wear braids and it's against their dress code policy. So I'm glad that this Crown Act is, enacted now, and at least we can start to heal, because it's also hurtful.
Yeah, it is very hurtful.
It kind of hinders us from really loving ourselves,
who we are
completely, and who we are here. We have to change it just to be accepted. So kudos to that act finally passing. I know we still have a long road ahead, but it's a start.
Yeah, that also, I have so many stories. I have so many hair stories because hair literally is like the center of a Black woman's world almost.
Yes, right? Absolutely. You're totally right. You're totally right about that.
And when I had locks, I had locks for 10 years, and I had wanted to start them probably about maybe 5 or 7 years before I actually started them at that time. And the main reason why I didn't start them was that mindset, because of what, I'm surrounded by, that people would think I'm not professional enough, So I stopped. I stopped myself from being able to just express who I was, as a result of what other people were thinking. And, I was so glad when I decided to take that step into that journey. And it was a beautiful journey, a journey I miss, but a journey, that it was a journey. It's there, it's gone, and I've moved on. But yeah, no, we should be allowed to show who we are regardless of how our hair looks. And I'm glad that act has passed.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So I have a story on Samuel L. Jackson and LaTanya Jackson, his beautiful wife, may I add. So they are featured on this week's edition. Is it this week or next week? I think it's the March 28th ad, but I'm pretty sure I saw it on the stands issue of People, where they're talking about the story behind their 50-year marriage/relationship, which kudos to them for 50 years. It's not every day you hear that. I was surprised to even learn that Samuel L. Jackson is like in his 70s now. It's interesting. You watch these actors as you grow up and you think they don't age even though you've aged.
Right.
So when I saw it, I think he's 73 or 74 or something along that line. His wife is 72. She looks amazing. But anyhow, they just talked about their marriage, some of the adversity that they had gone through, and how they've managed to just still remain in love. And I just think it's a beautiful story of your hashtag Black love that people like to throw out there to people who probably don't necessarily deserve that title, but that's a whole other show. Right. But, she spoke about, how they met on a flight. I believe they were going to some sort of protest, and he was really enamored, just by the woman she was and the passion she had. And they were together for 10 years before they actually got married, which I found quite interesting. And it was her grandfather who was ailing in his health. And he said, look, this can't continue. You deserve better. You are better. You need to figure it out. So they went ahead 2 years later, got married, ended up having a child, and they only had that one child, which is a daughter who is now 40 years old. So they're on I guess a little bit past that whole empty nest phase that we're going to be talking about today. Be nice to have them on the show to give us their feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
But and she talked about before he became big, how he had an addiction to crack, and what that did to their marriage. And one of the things they had said before they even got married was, no matter what, we're going to work through it. It doesn't matter what it is. Divorce is not an option, because they wanted to represent a strong Black family in light of all that they've seen around them. So that was really important to them. And that's not easy to do, especially in this day and age, I find, because you really have to have amnesia, which is what she said. You have to, things have to happen, and you just have to literally forget.
Let it go.
Yeah, let it go. But, he ended up going into rehab, because she said one day she came home and he was, I guess, on the kitchen floor, flat on his face. Not a good look. And it was her and her daughter. And of course, that's not the image you want your children to ever have growing up. So she decided, or she told him, you need to go. It's not even an option. He went, he cleaned himself up, and, he commends her for making him a better man. And it was shortly after that, his big break started to happen. Of course, we know with Jungle Fever. Right. And even that was a sensitive topic, because of course in Jungle Fever, in Jungle Fever, he played the crackhead. And his counselor had actually advised against him not taking that role, because he felt it was too close to his soberness. But his wife insisted. I guess she knew she had him. She had his back. And he went on. And of course, that was his big break, right? So he went on to be who we now know as Samuel L. Jackson. I love him as an actor.
Yes.
So it was just a great story to read, just about, what it takes, the oomph it really takes to get through a marriage in this day and age, or through their days into this age. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I thought it was a feel good story for me.
Yeah, definitely a feel good story. I love when men don't hesitate to give credit where credit is due.
Yes. Yes.
And it's beautiful to see him say, listen, if it wasn't for this woman right here, I wouldn't be who I am today. She was my rock. So that's always beautiful.
Absolutely. Okay. So do you have something to say? You look like you have something on your mind. Oh, okay. So moving on, let's talk about our topic for today. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare and go through the experience of being an empty nester. So for all you women who have children, stay tuned, or even if you're a caregiver to children, stay tuned. And why we've chosen to talk about this topic is because the research the research indicates that women tend to be more impacted when their children leave the home than men. And that was a quote by Dr. Hoffman. And he says, women are often socialized to predicate their worth on their role as caregivers and to put the needs of others before their own. They're also more likely to change career or educational trajectories when children are born. As a result, when children leave the nest, women may experience a profound loss of purpose and connection. And I can attest to that. Yeah. So that is why we chose to talk about this. And we have two guests who will be joining us today. Let's see if they're on the line waiting to get in. I believe so.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and give our audience a definition of what it is. What does it mean to be an empty nester? Empty nesters are parents whose children have grown up and moved out. When that happens, the reaction is often called empty nest syndrome because the individual is left feeling grief, lonely because their children have left home. So that's the general idea around empty nest syndrome.
Okay. And we do have somebody on the line. I don't have a name coming up, unfortunately. So I don't know who's on the line. Let's unmute and ask. Hi. Oh.
Hello.
Oh, Emma. Is this Emma?
It is Emma. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Emma. Thanks for joining us today for our chat.
Hi, Emma. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. And we're also waiting for one more to join, but it doesn't look like they're. Oh, she is here. Perfect. So just going to admit her right now. And then, oh, wonderful.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi,
welcome.
Brittany. She's connecting to her audio right now.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Show.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we have, we have two different guests. We have one that is already an empty nester and is experiencing that right now. We have a new mom to be. So we just kind of want to get some insight what it's like being a new mom and how this empty nest syndrome may play a role in her life now and how she's planning for it in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's start with Emma, since we have Emma on the phone. So Emma, do you want to tell us about your experience so far?
Wow. Let's see. My kids are young adults rather, are now 32 and 28. My son, being the eldest, left home around maybe 26. And, that was really hard because I always refer to my kids as, he was my love at first sight.
Oh.
That mother's love when you first have your baby. And my daughter, I always refer to as my forever love. And so when my love at first sight left, I felt like I lost a huge part of me. And, referring back to the opening remarks about, women having a hard time later on in life, you literally feel like you've, lost a part of you because, you've given birth to this child. You've raised this child. Nobody knows this person better than you. And so it was really, really, really hard for me. So I literally went through a grieving process for about a good, when I say grieving, I'm talking about crying every single day for a good 3 weeks. And he's excited. He's living his life, it's for him. And so that was really, really hard for me. When my daughter left home, it was a little bit easier because we were also downsizing at the same time. And so there was a distraction for me, but, you know, I can't imagine what it would be like to still remain in the family home, you know, and not have any of your kids around. So I didn't experience that part, but it definitely is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're definitely a classic case of having empty nest syndrome. You pretty much described all the symptoms from sadness, and I could only assume that the crying was related to depression, and all that comes in because you have a sense of loss. You know, when your son left home, it was like, I've lost my son. And how did it feel? Because you weren't able to, like, what were you missing more than anything?
Just missing his presence. I mean, you know, he's always been there. You know, he's never lived anywhere else. You see him every day. Sometimes you don't see them, but you know they're there. So that presence is there. And, you know, to get up and go to that empty room and not hear that laugh or, you know, having to yell at them to do something, you know, is an absolute loss. And because I still had my daughter at home, it made it, I don't want to say it was easier, but, you know, I still had a child there. So, you know, I could still focus on that other child, but it is a great loss to you.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you say that you had one child that was still at home and one that left, but you still were feeling that loss, even though you still had another child at home. That was interesting.
Right. Very much so. Okay, so for Brittany, who still has a young child, Brittany, is being an empty nester anything you've thought about so far as a mom?
Actually, I'm experiencing it now because I recently relocated to Los Angeles to start a fashion brand. And I tried the schools out here with my son. He's 6 years old. He'll be 7 in May. And I didn't like them. I didn't think he felt comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable. And I knew that, you know, the culture of, you know, who we are, I felt that in Atlanta more. So I made the sacrifice to allow him to stay with his dad for a year and, you know, come spend holidays and breaks with me. And then when I can travel there, I'll go. But that was like the hardest decision ever. And I cried for a long time. So I can definitely relate to, you know, the feeling of not having your child there around. He's used to being with me every day and we FaceTime every day, but it's still like, sometimes it feels like it's just not enough because I'm just used to having him with me all day, every day, you know, besides when he's at school. So, I know that it'll be worth it. And I try to, you know, make sure that, you know, I'm utilizing all the time that I have to make sure that, you know, this is definitely something that's, you know, worth the sacrifice. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long has it been? Sorry, I may have missed that part.
It's been since the top of March. But I made the decision in November. So I spent November, you know, until March there with him trying to, you know, I guess prepare myself for what I knew was coming. And then since March 1st, he's been with his dad like full time pretty much. Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So for Emma, how old were you when your children had left the house?
I was probably, how old was I? Maybe my late 40s when my first one left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the literature shows that parents are usually between the ages of 40 and 60 years old when you start to experience empty nesting. And of course, due to life events and life stages and second marriages, and now with a lot of people choosing to have children a little bit later in life, it can really affect you a lot more later than just 60. So you are pretty much right within that time frame for that to happen. Not to say it makes it any easier, but yeah, they do say it's between the ages of 40 and 60. So I was just curious.
So I'm going to read a quote from Dr. Christina Jones. She's a psychiatrist. And I'm just curious if any of this is relatable to any of you ladies. And she says, spending quality time with our children throughout the years that we have them before leaving right? If we didn't feel like we spent enough quality time, the syndrome gets exasperated. And there's also almost like a feeling of guilt that's left, that we didn't spend enough time with our children when they were younger. Could any one of you, maybe for both of you, is there guilt associated with the fact that maybe when they were younger, Emma, you didn't spend enough time with them? Or even for you, Brittany, is there guilt like, oh my God, I'm not spending enough time with my son, which is exasperating the feelings of maybe sadness and separation anxiety and all the other host of feelings that come with this syndrome?
I can speak to that. I didn't feel the guilt just because when I had children, I didn't have the same relationship, I think, with my own parents when I was younger. So I made that commitment to myself that no matter what, I was going to go in 110%. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I made sure of was I was always available for my kids. So, even when, they were 16, I'd be getting home from work and, they'd be at the door. Like my daughter was really big on this and she had 1,000,001 things to tell me. Half the time I didn't hear. Mom, weren't you listening? But I made sure I showed up, whether I was in the bathroom and she'd be right there at the bathroom door because she just had to share what was going on in her day. So that was one of the things I really made sure I did, was make sure that the communication lines were always open, no matter what time of day it was, mm-hmm. and no matter what the subject was. I mean, I even had an open door policy where their friends could come and have those hard conversations that they couldn't have with their parents. And so I think that kind of prepared me in a sense going into, becoming an empty nester, because we're still able to have those conversations, mm-hmm. and keep communication lines open. It's a different type of relationship. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I always say, when I'm at work and I see young mothers is, always communicate with your kids, whether it's good or bad. Have those conversations, keep the lines open. No topic is, a topic that you can't bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And I always encourage them to do that. So
it's definitely important, especially building relationship with your child, right? You always want our kids to come to us dealing with, if they're dealing with any of those big issues with life, we don't want them to get that information from outside. And we always want our kids to come to us if there's something wrong and not hide it or go to someone else. So that's a very good point you have about keeping that line of communication open. How about you, Brittany?
Well, I definitely make sure that we keep the line of communication open. But I did, and sometimes still do feel a little bit of the guilt. But my mom, she had to talk to me and she told me, she said, he's young, he may not even remember it, when he gets older. But I still feel like, even though it's a year, I feel like it's forever. But like I said, during those breaks and times that he has to come here, I go there. I try to make it happen every single time, just so it doesn't seem like I'm away. But he'll say he missed me and I say I miss him too. But I think it's just having me physically there and him physically there with me. But yeah, I do feel that sometimes, because you usually when you have children, you give up on your dreams. And I just wanted to be, an advocate that you don't have to, and still find ways to pursue your dreams and be a mother at the same time, so it's still a journey, but I'm taking it day by day.
Great point.
It is a really great point. And, Brittany, I can relate to some extent with you because I decided to go back to school as an adult after I'd had all my 5 children. And, that took a lot of time. And not only was I a full-time student, I was also working full-time. So, there were, 4 years not really spending what I would have the time I would have liked to have spent with them. But I just had to keep reminding myself that there's a bigger picture to why I'm doing this. And it's to not only better take care of myself, but also to better take care of them. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what kept me going. And, just also having the conversations with them when they weren't feeling so great or they wanted to spend time with me, but I didn't have the time. I would just say, one day we're going to do this and we're going to do that, because I just knew that I just had to get through those 4 years in order to provide better for everybody. So that's what kept me going through it for me. So hopefully, you can take some comfort in that as well.
Yeah. But it's interesting because what Brittany is doing is it's twofold, right?
Yeah.
She's taking care of herself as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she's making sacrifice. And many women have done that.
Yes.
You know, my grandmother left Jamaica to go to Canada and left all her kids behind until she was able to send for them, you know, one by one, two by two.
Yeah.
You know, even one was able to get a refugee status, but it was a sacrifice that she had to make to give her children a better life and still have a sense of fulfillment throughout the process, right? And even in the content of what we're discussing now, that's something that is very important. How do you find that balance? You know, how do you find that balance? Because empty nest syndrome, because the mom, and I'm guilty of it, pours so much into their kids, once they leave, they're like, who am I? You know? So Emma, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my story, but I don't want to take up too much of the oxygen in the room. So how about, you know, your experience, Emma? Did you feel at any point that you lost a little bit of yourself once your son left home?
I think that happened before, and if we can just backtrack a little bit. You know, Brittany, you know, I commend you for doing what you're doing. Because in hindsight now, I didn't have guilt at the time, but, you know, one of the things I encourage younger parents now is, you know, remember that you're part of the equation, and your kids are only as good as you are. And so, in keeping that communication line going and, you know, showing up and being present, and thank goodness we have lots of, you know, means of technology, even just this platform right now, is just a great way of communicating. But to just find some time in there for you, and just always to remember your goals as well. And you have to grow as well. So I commend you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, keep it up. And, you know, I really encourage you to continue that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now, in terms of balance, because of that, I found I missed out on a lot. And so I'm trying to find that balance now by picking up on the things that I missed out on, because I was so busy raising kids. And, you know, in the early stages, it was difficult. It's, you know, I'm not there yet completely, but I'm on a better part of the, you know, that transition in terms of, you know, finding balance. But I did miss out on a lot of things. So
just curious, like when you say you've missed out on a lot of things, in what regard are you speaking? In
terms of, you know, like basic things like self-care. You know, as mothers, we tend to give everything to our kids, and, you know, there's a lot that's involved in self-care, you know.
Yes.
Just taking that 5 minutes or 10 minutes for yourself, you know, scheduling that, you know, that Sunday bath, you know. Now I try to do Sunday self-care for myself. But when I had kids, I didn't do that. So just making sure that you're incorporating different parts of yourself in that equation while you're raising kids is really important as a parent.
Yes. And actually, in an article I read, that's what they spoke about, is that a lot of the times we tend to wait until either the kids leave or a little bit before they leave, before we start thinking about ourselves and what we're going to do. Because I guess it's like the reality is literally right there. But in essence, what we should be doing is preparing all along while we rear them, what's important to us, and continue to, you know, continue to discover ourselves and do for ourselves and have that self-care. But it's so easy, like I mentioned earlier, to lose ourselves to being mom, you know, because we want to make sure that our babies are okay and that they're well looked after. And we take so much pride in that. But on the flip side of that, they say that can make empty nesting a lot more difficult for a woman, is because it's almost like that. Now what do I do? You almost don't even know who you are. You have to reinvent yourself. And with that comes a lot of other things that we're going to talk about in a bit.
Yeah. So to some extent, even though, you know, my kids are still home, but they're more independent. Once they started to gain their independence, my son is 16. My daughter is she's 12. And I started not being so hands-on with them. I start to get that feeling, you know, like, wait a minute, I don't always have to cook for them. Wait a minute, they could actually clean. Wait a minute, my son is driving a car. And all of a sudden I felt like I wasn't needed anymore. that space of being needed was taken away. So it's like, how do I fill this space?
Yeah.
You know, I was giving this all to my kids. Now they're, you know, more independent and they're not even out of the house yet. You know, how do I fill the space of not being needed as much? You know, Emma, did you experience that at all?
I did. I actually think I experienced it twice when, you know, they were around the ages of preteen.
Okay.
They're
so around the same time.
And then later on, of course, you know, when they started driving and, you know, the whole dating process. And it's like, oh, like I'm really not needed anymore. They don't have any time for me. You know, you want to talk to them and say, oh, seriously, mom, like right now, like, you know, I got to talk to my boyfriend. Or I got to talk to my boyfriend. You know, so
no longer important.
You're not important.
Right. So, you know, that was really, really hard. And, you know, I mean, I tried, you know, but it was still hard. But I think if I had filled my time a little bit more with some other things, I think I'd probably be further along. You know, but if I had to do it over, I definitely would, you know, find other things to do. That was good for me. Yeah.
See, I'm learning early, you know, because I'm experiencing those feelings and I'm starting to, you know, fill those voids with stuff that I want to do, you know, even in my relationship, you know, taking time and putting time and effort into that, which is something that I haven't done in years past, you know? So it's almost like, okay, what do I want? You know, how do I take care of me? What does taking care of me even look like at this, you know, at this juncture?
At this point. And that really resonates for me too, as I'm going through that right now. You know, my oldest is 28, my goodness, and my youngest are twins, they're 19, you know, so now they're in college, they're in university. My son recently moved away for school. My daughter will be moving away for school in the next couple of months. So there will be nobody left, no children left in the house. And I would say maybe about since last year, I've been definitely going through the whole, you know, the grieving and just really trying to find my purpose, you know, because my life has changed quite a bit in the last 2 years. And it's, you know, it's about finding my purpose. So in doing the research for this show, it's been really helpful for myself in that manner, because, you know, I have some pointers, which I'm going to share in a bit, that I can use as well to kind of help me as I transition into this empty nesting phase. Because I still feel so young, you know, like I still feel like I'm 20, even though I'm not. But I mean, I'm still, you know, I'm within that early 40 range. So, so it's almost like, wow, I don't know, you know, life is, I feel like everything is going to be turned up on top of its head. That's literally how it's been feeling. I feel like I'm a little upside down. So I can relate to these stories. One of the things that I want to mention is the article that we used as a part of our research speaks about questions that you should ask yourself while you're child rearing and even after. So some of the questions that they mention is asking yourself, you know, how can you take care of yourself emotionally? Or how do you take care of yourself emotionally, physically, and spiritually? What brings you a greater sense of meaning and joy? Whom do you want to spend your free time with? You know, and they say it could be difficult to answer these questions, but I want to kind of extend these questions to you, our guest. How do you currently now take care of yourself emotionally, physically, and spiritually?
Start with Brittany.
Oh, Brittany, yeah.
So for me, I do a lot of journaling. It helps clear my mind. Because I lost my dad in 2018, and that was literally like my best friend. So growing up, me and my mom, we weren't as close, but we've definitely gotten closer ever since my dad has passed. So I found that journaling just helps me in all three categories. A lot of pictures, looking at pictures. I love to remind myself of memories, videos. Those are, I think, are the main things that help me for right now. Yeah.
Okay. And Emma?
I'd have to say emotionally, there was a point, I guess, when my daughter was gone, and then the silence became very loud.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very loud. It was deafening, and again, I mean, at work wasn't the greatest, and so I found I had to schedule a couple of therapy sessions in there just to calm that silence and figure myself out emotionally where I was in that. And that really helped. That helped to give me some focus as to what are next steps for me. In terms of spiritually, I joined. We have a Bible study through work where we meet every day during lunch, and so that helped me to ground myself. And so spirituality became a big part of my life, right? And is a big part of my life, and I make sure I incorporate that every single day. And physically, just making some changes in terms of working on your weight and physically, and making sure that self-care which is a huge part for me. Gets back in there, and I find that helps to just kind of balance things out.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question, relational wise, and I'll start, with Brittany. How, as you being away, not being full-time mom for the year, affected your relationship with your partner? I'm not sure if you're married or anything, but yeah.
No, me and my son's dad, we were high school sweethearts, and within actually the last year and a half, we became closer and had a better co-parenting relationship. So it's actually brought us closer. I think a lot of the animosity came in the beginning because, of his lack of parenting, which they say, men mature slower than women. But I didn't understand it growing up or dealing with it because he saw what it's like to have both parents in a household. While I grew up with my parents, they separated when I was 7. So I felt like, he didn't have an excuse, and I felt my son deserved more. So with him stepping up within the last year and a half, it's definitely brought us closer. Mm-hmm. And there's no fighting at all. We get along a lot better. And I used to pray for moments like this just so my son could see, a healthy relationship. And now that we've gotten here, it's really a prayer to come, because I never thought it would get here, but it's definitely brought us closer.
That's awesome. And kudos to him for stepping up and helping you to, that is so admirable. Seriously, he's stepping up to the plate, taking care of your son while you're out there pursuing your dreams. It doesn't get any better than that. You are truly blessed and, lucky.
You are.
Awesome.
I just want to give a shout out while we're here to Pat T. She's on YouTube watching us right now. And she made a comment that I just want to take the time to read. She goes, "It truly is hard, especially when they are your only child. You miss them so much. We have to trust that we prepared them for life outside of the home, but it isn't easy."
Yeah.
And that is 100% correct. Thank you, Pat, for that comment. Yeah. Emma, did you want to answer the same question? Sorry.
I was going to say, I agree with that comment, so much. And I take comfort in that, that I did prepare my kids. I did give them the foundation, and, at some point we have to let them go. That's our job as parents. And so now it's their time to fly, and we're here to just now encourage them and to be a support for them. So, and also, if it is your only child, I can't imagine that, that's got to be just really hard on your heart. Mm-hmm. And I also think about parents where, there wasn't a good relationship with their children. Mm-hmm. And then even I think that's where there might be a lot of guilt. I'm just speculating that, you didn't have that relationship. So how do you now have the adult relationship if you didn't have a good relationship prior to children moving out, right? So I think that's hard.
I think in that space, it's really having the understanding that no one is perfect,
right?
And we're all on this journey, just trying to figure it out, the best way we know how. Sometimes it's learning from mistakes, sometimes it's learning from other people's mistakes, but it's still a learning and growing dynamic that we are all in, and no one has mastered it yet, right? So it's just, being kind and thoughtful that whatever space that you're in, it's okay, as we're moving forward. In the notes I have here, Dr. Cohen, I'm going to read a quote that Dr. Cohen mentioned, and it was interesting. I just kind of want to get your take on this, all you ladies. It says, kids need to leave and grow. From the moment they're born, they're learning how to separate from us. What are your thoughts on that quote from Dr. Cohen?
I feel I can understand it because your role as a parent is to prepare them for one day, not being around you. But that's something I guess you never really think about, I'm not sure how to explain what I'm saying. It's when you sit and think about it, it seems a lot harder, or it's easier to say it versus thinking that it will really happen. From you, but I feel that's our role as parents to prepare them for the world. Yeah. So yeah, I can understand that statement.
Yeah. And I think when I heard the statement, or rather when I read the statement, it just kind of made it a little bit more human. Like, you know what? That's true. They're constantly learning to separate from us. And this is part of the natural progression of their growth and their independence. And we're just guides. We sow in we pour in whatever we need to pour into them, but we have to allow them to grow and separate and be who they're supposed to be in this world. It just kind of takes a little bit of the tension off of it when you look at it in this capacity of, the moment they're born, they're learning to separate from us. They're Mr. or Mrs. Independence, I got it. I can do it. Fine.
I don't need
Leave
you.
me alone. Yeah.
You don't know anything. You're old. As I'm listening to the conversation, this is going to sound so weird, but I'm a nature fan and I watch a lot of those as nature shows. And, when you watch animals who give birth, how they treat their children, they'll coddle them in the very beginning. But once they start to find their own legs, literally, they start to just send them ahead, right? And they say, okay, these are some of the things you're going to have to learn, but I'm here with you. I watched one where there was a bird. I don't know what kind of bird it is. They're on a cliff, some high cliff. And what they do to teach their babies to fly is they literally push them out of the nest and see if they fly. And some of them fly and some of them don't. Some of them hit wherever and they die. And that's just I'm not trying to go all the way there, but I'm just saying that sometimes you have to kind of give them that push to kind of help to prepare them for what the reality of living in this world are. And I've always taken my personal job as a mom as I'm here to help you become the best adult you can be, or at least start to plant those seeds, right? And I think in Patrick's show before our show, there's a gentleman who spoke on the same thing. Like, our job is not to baby them and keep them home until they're 30 or 40 years old. There's a point in time when you have to say, okay, the world is there. I have done all that I know how to do to prepare you for that. I planted the seeds. I am here for you to return to should you need, but it's time for you to, find your way. And that's actually my next question for Emma. Emma, for when your kids decided to leave home, was it their decision or was it something you kind of had to have a conversation with them about?
Oh, no, it was absolutely their decision.
Okay.
One of the things, because I've, worked with youth for many, many years. And for a brief period of time, I worked with, adults that were still living with their parents, whether, on drugs or mental health issues, or, sometimes it wasn't even that, they just brought the kids home, their own children home. And so, I always thought it was not fair to the parents. So, having had many cases like that, one of the things I always told my kids were, you're welcome to stay here as long as you're pursuing your education, because education comes first, right? And once you have your education, you're still welcome to stay here as long as you're working full time and putting your education to use. Those were the rules when they became adults. So when they were leaving, the shock was like, where are you going? And I think it was myself, the hard part, like, why are you leaving me? But I remember saying to my son, like, you don't have to leave, just be aware that, this is now a different rule that you've never heard before, that, if you still leave, be sure about your decision, because this is not a revolving door, right? And, the only way back in is if you're ill and not able to care for yourself. So be sure of your decisions. If you're going to fly, know what you're doing. Make sure you have a plan. So I always tell them, make sure you have a plan, and not just a plan A, but make sure that, there's a plan B in there as well. So, yeah. So.
Okay. And are you married, Emma? Because I think we didn't get your take on that part. You are. And how has, now that the children have left, how has that been with you and your husband?
I have a husband. And, you don't realize how much you don't put in. And that's why it's really important to put into your relationship as you're raising kids. Like, I don't think I did. And you don't realize it until the nest is empty. And now it's, okay, who is this person? And so, we've now been empty nesters completely now for, I think August will be 3 years. And so now we're in that process of trying to relearn and get to know each other all over again, because it became very toxic, right? Because I didn't know who that person was anymore. And I'm sure that person didn't know, he didn't know who I was anymore either. So it's very different. It's very different when you're busy raising kids. It is the family home. And when the kids are no longer there, now it's us. Now what? So really important to, pay attention to your relationship as you're raising those kids, and to actually put into that relationship.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing that, because what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if you felt once your kids left that there was a sense of loss of identity, that you're trying to figure out who you were as an individual. And then at the same token, you're trying to figure out who your husband is.
Right. Yeah.
So both of you,
right.
Is that correct? Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, and, I had to, I found myself in a position where I had to examine a lot of things in life. So, I now had to look at, not just my marriage, but, other relationships with, family members and friends. And you now really have to look within yourself and identify the different areas that you need to look at more closely. And, some relationships have ended, but I feel a lot better because of it. Right. So, yeah.
All right. I know we have about 10 minutes left. I do have a question for Emma. If you would give Brittany some advice, as she's going to eventually transition into that space, what would you tell her?
Show up for you first. Show up for you first. I'm a strong believer in, and especially when my kids were dating, let me get to know the parents. When I get to know the parents, I'll get to know the type of kids that they raised, right? So show up for you first. And when you show up for yourself, it'll make you a better person, because you'll feel better about yourself and your accomplishments in terms of, self-care, your goals, and, that will transition to your son, right? And keep that communication open, even though you cannot be physically there with him. Like I said, we have the means now that you can FaceTime every single day, and keep it open. Don't leave it to just once a day. If he needs to reach out to you, no matter what time of day it is, he can reach out to you. And, talk about all kinds of topics, make those conversations, ask open-ended questions, right? So that, inquire more and more and more, just always be there for him, no matter what. Make sure that he knows it. And when you do see him, make sure that you touch him, make sure that you're hugging him all the time and you're kissing him all the time, so that he feels that love, right? So it's important. And, find something that's just for you and him, right? Okay. So, whether it's a code word or, something that nobody else knows about, only the two of you. And
I like that.
There's
I do too.
Really, really close connection. right? So it's just about the two of you.
Actually, funny that you say that, because me and my dad had this thing called butterfly kisses, and we would blink our eyelashes together and say butterfly.
No.
I put that down to my son. And so if I haven't did it in a while, he'll say butterfly. We haven't did butterfly, and we'll do it. And okay, he knows now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's beautiful. That really is beautiful. Ooh, tearing up again.
I know.
I have a thing where I think once a month I cry on this show, so don't mind me. Happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and here we go again. Okay. That was wonderful advice. Beautiful. And one of the things I want to make sure that we talk about with the little time we have left is it just touches on the marital piece, because I think that's really important, because in the research I did, it said, some people realize, okay, I don't even know who you are. I don't even like you. And I think maybe we're better going our own way. But it also is a great time to reconnect. Mm-hmm. And they talk about re-examining your role and relationship. And it says, you and your partner no longer need to parent daily. So, of course, what are you going to talk about? Do you really have anything in common? And you likely do. So this is the time to really redefine what your relationship is all about. It can be exploring interests and connecting with people and activities that you may not have been able to do while you were taking care of your kids. And then they talk about laughing more with your partner, telling stories, watching funny movies together, and discovering what your values are, speaking aloud to what your values are. Writing them down in a journal can be very helpful, because it helps you re-examine what matters to you in life. And it also helps you to find new outlets that align with your core values. It talks about getting to know your adult kids, and I'm going through this now. Finding new ways to communicate with your kids can be very mutually beneficial. So asking them what works can be a good starting point. So texting, phone calls, kind of let them guide how they want you to show up as a parent for them too, because that's important. Exercising regularly can perk up your spirits. It shows that you can actually improve your life satisfaction just with your ability to be able to perform daily activities as you age, and invest in yourself. So imagining yourself as a stock portfolio can be helpful in understanding your value. How would you invest in yourself? Start a new business, a new hobby, go on a delayed vacation, spend time with family and friends. Having more time and energy can allow you to invest more in your overall well-being. And then, like we spoke about, it says it again, practice self-care. Taking care of yourself is important. This can be an ideal time to do just that. Eat well, enjoy yourself, go and get massages, whatever it takes to restore your mind, body, and soul, do that. So I love that. I love those ideas.
Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah, going back on the relationship, I'm going to try to be real quick. I kind of find that it's so important, especially if you're in this space right now, anyone that's listening and they're like, you know what, my husband and I, we're just, we don't see eye to eye. This is not working. I don't know who he is. I think we need to keep in mind, or it would be helpful to keep in mind, that while you're trying to discover you, he's probably trying to discover himself as well.
True.
And this space could be a growing space for both of you, because it's a new dynamic. It's new for everyone. So I know a lot of people do find themselves divorcing, or going their separate ways, but I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do immediately, especially in the space of, I'm trying to figure me out, you're trying to figure you out. In the meantime, can we also trying to figure us out and see if we can get back to where we were before, instead of just throwing it all away.
Right. I agree.
Something to ponder,
Yeah, it's a great point. Great advice. Okay, so we're down to 4 minutes. So, do you have any last words for our guest, Tina Cole?
No, not at all. I just, as we're closing out, Brittany, I feel that you represent, the modern day woman who's finding a way to make it work. Many of us have missed out. I know my mom would say, I wish I had done that. You know, I could hear so many people that could say, I wish I had done that. And you're doing it well. You have a partner that's there supportive. It's a role model for people out there that feels that they can't do it. And it's perfect setup for your future. When your little one goes out and does his own thing, you can say, you know what? I worked on me as well, you know, and I'm whole and I'm happy and I've done this and I've done that. So kudos to you for taking that brave step that many women probably, you know, wouldn't be able to do for whatever reason. No judgment either way. So kudos for doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. And Emma, thank you so much for joining us today. Your experience has been extremely enlightening, not just for myself, but I'm sure for many of the other people who are listening to you right now. You're definitely a woman of strength, and we wish you all the very best as you continue on in this new chapter of your life.
Absolutely. And your advice will go far for sure.
Will.
You know, there's so many people that needed to hear exactly what you are, you know, what you shared today, because they're going through the exact same thing and they probably feel depressed. They probably feel lonely. They don't know where to turn, but hearing your word of advice is hopefully a bit of hope for them to continue moving forward and taking care of self.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, ladies. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you guys for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay. So now, that was a great conversation.
It really was.
It really resonated with me. And I don't think we're too far off from, you know, how the men feel. And that's why I think, especially, you know, when you're raising your children in two-parent households, it's important to keep that line of communication open, you know, go out, enjoy each other, do things with your kids together and do things away from your kids. Have your date nights, you know, stay connected, because there will come a day when the children have to, you know, fly the coop, and you're going to look at it. You don't want to look at each other and be like, what now?
And it's that awareness piece, you know, oftentimes we're not even aware that we're so consumed with our children. And when they're gone, we're like, whoa, hold up. Who am I? What do I do? You know, so if anything, I hope our audience got the awareness piece, you know, that this will happen because it's the natural progression of life when you're raising children. So now's the time to start preparing, you know, in the most healthy way to create that balance that's needed.
Yes, absolutely. So next week, Sunday, we have our self-care series that started.
Yay! I love it.
I need an applause. Like, I need hands of applause. We have to, sounds need to be incorporated into the show. Self-care series. And so, yeah, we would love for everybody to tune into that. It's going to be amazing. Tina Cole, do you have anything you want to say about that before we go?
Nope, we're getting ready to wrap right now. I'm really excited about the self-care. We're starting with self-love next week. Definitely tune in. Lots to learn. I've been learning and growing along the process of researching. And stay tuned for the next show coming up with
you're listening to
Honey
iLive Radio
with Alicia G.
Changing the way you listen to radio.
Hi, I'm urban